From a morning coffee to a celebratory cake, sugar is a ubiquitous part of our daily lives, a source of instant gratification and comfort. It sweetens our food, preserves our treats, and fuels our energy. Most of us hardly give a second thought to where this fine, white powder comes from, or the journey it undertook to reach our tables. But behind this seemingly innocent delight lies a history as complex as it is dark, a story intrinsically woven with tales of human ambition, industrial innovation, and unimaginable suffering. Today, we delve into that hidden past. Our story begins not in a factory, but in the lush, tropical forests of New Guinea, over 10,000 years ago. Here, the ancestral form of sugarcane, a tall, sturdy grass, first emerged. Early humans discovered its sweet secret by simply chewing on the stalks. This raw, natural sweetness was a rare and valuable find in the ancient world, a simple pleasure that required no complex processing. It was a local treat, a natural candy, far removed from the refined granules we know today. From New Guinea, sugarcane began a slow but significant journey westward, eventually reaching the Indian subcontinent around 1500 BC. It was here that a pivotal innovation occurred, the discovery of how to process sugarcane juice into solid, crystallized sugar. This wasn't merely about sweetness, it was about preservation and transport. The process involved crushing the cane to extract the juice, boiling it down to evaporate the water, and then allowing the concentrated syrup to cool and crystallize. This granulated form, initially called saccharum, was a true marvel, marking the birth of sugar as a storable commodity. Over the next millennium, the knowledge of sugar cultivation and processing continued its westward march. By the 7th century AD, the Arab world had embraced sugarcane. Islamic scholars and traders not only adopted the crop but also significantly refined its production methods. They established large-scale plantations and sophisticated refineries, improving the purity and quality of sugar. Under their influence, sugar became a highly prized luxury item, an exotic spice and medicine, symbolizing wealth and status throughout the Middle East and North Africa. It was a true golden age for this sweet commodity. It wasn't until the Crusades, between the 11th and 13th centuries, that Europeans truly encountered sugar. Returning crusaders brought back tales and samples of this mysterious new sweet salt from the Holy Land. Initially, sugar was imported to Europe as a rare and expensive spice, alongside ginger, cinnamon, and pepper. It was used sparingly by the wealthy elite, often for medicinal purposes or as a display of status at banquets. Its scarcity and high cost made it an item of extreme luxury, far beyond the reach of the common person. Intrigued by its potential, European entrepreneurs began attempting to cultivate sugarcane closer to home. By the 14th and 15th centuries, plantations emerged in the Mediterranean islands of Cyprus, Sicily, and later on the Iberian Peninsula and the Atlantic islands like the Canaries and Madeira. These early European sugar ventures often relied on various forms of coerced labor, including serfs, prisoners, and enslaved people from the Ottoman Empire or local populations. This pattern of using forced labor for sugar was established long before the transatlantic trade, hinting at the future's dark trajectory. The true game-changer for sugar production came with the age of exploration. In 1493, on his second voyage, Christopher Columbus introduced sugarcane to the Caribbean, specifically to the island of Hispaniola. He brought cuttings from the Canary Islands, recognizing the immense potential of the New World's climate. The fertile soils, abundant rainfall, and long growing seasons of the Caribbean proved to be ideal for sugarcane cultivation, far surpassing the conditions found in the Mediterranean. This moment marked a critical turning point, setting the stage for sugar's explosive growth and, tragically, its deep entanglement with human exploitation. As sugarcane flourished in the Americas, European demand for sugar skyrocketed throughout the 17th and 18th centuries. It transformed from a rare luxury into a widely desired commodity. The rise of new social rituals, like drinking tea, coffee, and chocolate, fueled an insatiable appetite for sweeteners. sugar also became central to new culinary trends, from jams and preserves to elaborate confectionery. It was no longer just a spice, it was an essential ingredient, a symbol of refinement, and a potent energy source for the burgeoning industrial populations of Europe. This exponential demand created immense pressure for increased production. To meet this surging European demand, the sugar industry in the New World rapidly evolved into a vast, industrial-scale enterprise, the plantation system. These plantations were not small farms, they were immense agricultural factories, often covering thousands of acres, dedicated almost exclusively to sugarcane. This reliance on a single crop is known as monoculture. The scale of these operations required a massive, disciplined labor force and efficient processing facilities, transforming tropical islands and coastal regions into highly specialized, highly profitable sugar-producing machines. The stage was set for an unprecedented mobilization of labor. Initially, European colonizers attempted to use indigenous populations as forced labor on these nascent sugar plantations. However, these communities were rapidly decimated by European diseases, overwork, and brutal treatment, leading to a catastrophic population collapse. Attempts to use indentured servants from Europe also proved largely unsuccessful. The harsh conditions, disease, and tropical climate led to extremely high mortality rates and frequent desertions. Planters faced what they perceived as a critical labor shortage, a problem that threatened their immense profits and the burgeoning European sugar trade. They sought a more reliable and exploitable workforce. The planters' solution to their labor needs marked one of the darkest chapters in human history, the systematic enslavement and transportation of millions of Africans across the Atlantic. Beginning in the early 16th century, and intensifying dramatically by the 17th and 18th centuries, European powers initiated the transatlantic slave trade. Africans were forcibly removed from their homes, brutally captured, and sold into bondage. They were deemed ideal for sugar plantation labor due to their perceived resilience to tropical diseases and their agricultural knowledge, a deeply flawed and racist justification for an inhumane system. The journey across the Atlantic, known as the Middle Passage, was an unimaginable horror. Enslaved Africans were crammed into the suffocating, unsanitary holds of slave ships, often chained together with barely enough room to breathe. The voyages could last for weeks or months, plagued by disease, starvation, and extreme violence. Estimates suggest that between 10% and 20% of those who embarked perished during the journey. This forced migration, stripping individuals of their humanity, culture, and freedom, was the engine that powered the sugar plantations of the New World, fueling a global economy built on immense suffering. For those who survived the Middle Passage, life on a sugar plantation was a new form of hell. Enslaved people faced relentless, backbreaking labor from dawn till dusk, 6 days a week, often under the scorching sun. The work was varied but equally brutal, clearing land, planting cane, weeding, and, most dangerously, cutting the mature stalks with sharp machetes. Overseers enforced discipline with extreme violence, including whipping and torture. Food rations were meager, housing was rudimentary, and medical care was virtually non-existent. The sugar plantation was designed as a total institution, stripping away individual identity and fostering despair. The sugar mill itself was a particularly perilous place. After cutting, the cane had to be processed immediately to prevent spoilage. This involved feeding the cane into heavy, dangerous rollers to extract the juice, a task that often resulted in severe injuries, including crushed limbs. The juice was then transferred to enormous copper vats, where it was boiled at intensely high temperatures to crystallize the sugar. The boiling houses were hot, humid, and filled with noxious fumes, causing burns and lung problems. The entire process was a deadly dance between man and machine, extracting sweetness at an immense human cost. Despite the brutal conditions, enslaved people were not passive victims. They resisted in countless ways, from overt rebellions and organized escapes to the formation of marooned communities in remote areas, to subtle acts of sabotage, feigned illness, and the preservation of their cultural traditions. Spiritual practices, music, and oral histories became vital forms of resilience, helping to maintain a sense of identity and community in the face of dehumanization. These acts of resistance, large and small, demonstrate the enduring human spirit and the relentless fight for freedom against an overwhelmingly oppressive system. The vast wealth generated by sugar fueled the economies of European colonial powers like Britain, France, Spain, and Portugal. Sugar became the single most valuable commodity in global trade, creating immense fortunes for plantation owners, merchants, and financiers. This capital stimulated industrial growth in Europe, contributing to the rise of port cities and manufacturing industries. The sugar lobby wielded enormous political power, ensuring policies that protected their brutal system. The demand for sugar was so great that it literally reshaped global geopolitics, making colonies like Jamaica or Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, incredibly valuable possessions. As the horrors of the slave trade became more widely known, particularly through the powerful testimonies of former enslaved people like Olaudah Equiano, abolitionist movements gained momentum in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Led by figures like William Wilberforce, these activists campaigned tirelessly against slavery, using moral, religious, and economic arguments. Boycotts of slave-produced sugar became a powerful tool, encouraging consumers to choose free sugar as a statement against the brutal system. The fight for abolition was a long and arduous struggle, challenging deeply entrenched economic interests. Even after the abolition of slavery in the British Empire in 1833, and later in other nations, the sugar plantations still needed labor. To maintain production and profits, a new system of exploitation emerged: indentured servitude, primarily from India and China. Millions of people, often fleeing poverty, were contracted to work on sugar plantations in the Caribbean, South America, and Fiji under conditions that were often little better than slavery. While technically free, they faced deceptive contracts, harsh working conditions, low wages, and limited opportunities to return home. The legacy of coerced labor for sugar continued, simply shifting its form. Today, sugar production is a highly industrialized global enterprise. While sugarcane remains a primary source, sugar beets grown in temperate climates also contribute significantly. Modern techniques employ advanced machinery for harvesting, efficient mills for crushing, and sophisticated refining processes that yield the pure, white sugar we see in stores. The scale is immense, and the supply chain spans the globe, making sugar more affordable and accessible than ever before. However, the shadow of its past, built on the suffering of millions, remains a crucial part of its story, reminding us how far we have come, and how much we owe to that history. The legacy of sugar and slavery extends far beyond historical texts. It profoundly shaped the demographics, cultures, economies, and racial hierarchies of the Americas and beyond. The wealth generated by slavery built institutions and cities, while the descendants of enslaved people continue to grapple with systemic inequalities and historical trauma. Understanding sugar's true history is vital for comprehending the roots of many contemporary social and economic disparities. It serves as a stark reminder of how powerful economic forces can drive immense human suffering, leaving scars that persist for centuries. So, the next time you reach for sugar, perhaps take a moment to reflect on its journey. This isn't to diminish the joy it brings, but to invite a deeper understanding of its complex past. To be a conscious consumer means to acknowledge the origins of our everyday comforts, to understand the human hands and lives that shaped them, and to recognize the historical narratives embedded in our global economy. By educating ourselves about the true cost of sweetness, we honor the memory of those who suffered and strive for a more just future. From its humble beginnings as a chewed stalk in New Guinea to the brutal efficiency of the industrial plantation system, sugar's journey is a microcosm of human history, a story of innovation, insatiable demand, and unimaginable human cost. The sweet taste we so readily enjoy is, for millions, forever stained with the bitterness of slavery and exploitation. This dark chapter reminds us that seemingly simple pleasures often carry profound, unseen burdens. By understanding this legacy, we gain not only historical context but also a deeper appreciation for the ongoing struggle for justice and equality in our world.